And now we'll move on to representative for Malaysia, Lhavanya. She's a Malaysian youth delegation, the co-focal point of Malaysia Youth Delegation. Lhavanya has been involved in climate change policy for the past 4 years, since she got involved with MYD, and she attended COP23 in 2007, 2017, and the Intersessional in Bangkok in 2018 as youth delegate. So may we now welcome Lhavanya. Lhavanya, I think you're muted.
Whoops, sorry. Okay. Thank you for reminding me, and I'm so excited to be here this morning and to be able to share from Malaysia with a Southeast Asian audience. In Malaysia, I found that a lot of our challenges were also resonated a lot with the Indonesian speaker, Lia. MYD, we are a youth climate change NGO that works specifically on policy making, climate change and policy. And we do this by advocacy through lobbying the government and trying to increase the youth agenda at the policy making level. Because what we've seen, and I'm sure a lot of you all can identify with this as well, is that the political elites tend to be the gatekeepers to political improvement and policy change. And what they want is oftentimes very different from what we want, because we're talking about people less than 30 versus people who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. So for example, one of our ex-Prime Minister, he wanted to implement a third national car. A third national car, not the first, not the second, but the third. And he had also been talking about this. He implemented the first national car back in, well, when I was born, 20 plus years ago. So their agendas haven't changed, but for youth like us, we want other things, right? We want flexi working hours, we want better public transport, better minimum wage, etc. So policies like that, for us to represent our thoughts at the policy-making level is really, really important. And I think as a youth, I felt this in the past, and I'm sure many of you have, you feel very frustrated because you can't seem to do anything, you can't seem to make changes, and as an individual, how do you make a difference to something as big as climate change, you know? So if you guys have had a similar issue, or you've felt something similar, maybe you can leave me a thumbs up reaction in your little box, and people watching the FB Live can drop their comments about how they have felt in their journey to address climate change. So related to this, I also work with Bersih, which means clean in our national language. We work towards electoral reform and democracy. And ever since working with them, I've realized that climate change issues and democracy or environmental issues really go hand in hand with democracy and direct representation of the people's voice in policy making. So just to illustrate one example, right now we are under movement control order in the Klang Valley. So we're talking about a population of about 8 million people who are supposed to stay at home. And over the past month or so, we've been having repeated water cuts because of pollution of different rivers at different points of time. And at any one time, we're having people going for 7 days without water. People, and the population that's affected, we're talking about like 5 million people who don't get water or who get very little water. And this is during a movement control order when you're supposed to stay at home. So instead you have people lining up outside at water trucks to get water. So this was because various factories have been polluting the river. And when they investigated, they found that these factories have been operating without licenses, built without permission of the local councils. And in some cases, the factory was a repeat offender of polluting the river. So why there is this case is because the local councils are not taking action. because they don't feel like they have a responsibility to the people. These local councils are not elected members, they are nominated by the government. So in Bersih, we are trying to implement local elections. We had it a long time ago in the past, but it was stopped. So we're trying to bring that back so that people can have a direct say in what happens in the environment around them. And this is something that will increase awareness of these issues as well. A lot of people are not aware. According to a poll in last year by our national newspaper, only about 64% of youth are concerned or aware about climate change, which is quite low. And we could definitely increase this number. So that's one way that I see democracy and environmental issues and climate change issues being directly linked. And in MOED, as I mentioned, we try to increase the youth agenda in the policy making process. So we have talked with the government, we have bilateral relations with them, we accompany their negotiators to COP, and we have a close rapport with them. And most lately, we have been trying to get ourselves a seat at the discussion tables on the actual national policy making process. And we have been trying to increase this presence among the youth as well and the general public. A lot of what we do is advocacy. So for example, we are also organizing a similar event to this, another Lcoy in Malaysia. It will be the third time that we'll be organizing this in the coming months. Or it'll be running over 3 weekends. So if you're interested, you can just check out our Facebook page on that. It's called the Malaysian Youth Delegation.